Hi everyone, Kai here with you today, and I'd like to share a card that I did for a blog hop with Ink Blot Shop and My Sweet Petunia. I am using the stamp set called Flopsy Birds, which is just adorable. It's got so many different birds you can pick from for your cards, and I've done 2 cards today, but I'm just showing one of them on the video. I first started off by doing the Crafter's Workshop Feathers stencil on my card base, and then I'm laying down some vellum to soften the appearance of it, and I'll glue down the vellum and then attach the frame on foam dots. So to start, on watercolor paper, I'm using Fabriano hot press watercolor paper, 140 pound, to do this, and I'm stamping my images. I stamp using Ranger Archival ink in jet black, and then I stamp the branch that I'm going to be using in the Ranger Archival inks in the chartreuse. So I do several passes to get a good, nice, crisp image of the birds, and several passes for the branch as well. Off to the side, I put in my little dish there, I have the sentiment words tweet and chirp, which I'll use later. And to watercolor my cute little birds, I'm going to be using my Zig clean color brushes. I've picked out oranges and light carmine and a couple different shades of green to do the birds. I'm using my aqua brush to start out with, and then I change to my normal watercolor brush, which I think is a number 6. I find sometimes you get too much water from your aqua brushes, so I tend to finish up, get a nice smooth finish with my regular watercolor brushes. This is the boring part, when you sit and look at the coloring. I should say that for the stencil, I used, you can see them in the video here, I used the Ranger Archival mini inks, and I used Monarch Orange, Paradise Teal, Bright Tangelo, that's probably better, and Vivid Chartreuse. You can hear my bird in the background. That was when I was taping the video. So she usually starts to chirp when she hears the chirp in the video, so don't be surprised by that. And in the video later on, she's flown over to see what I'm doing, and as the chirps get louder because she's on my shoulder right under the camera. So I'm just picking up what I'm doing with the birds is I'm adding color in layers. So I've added the first color, and usually when I do one bird and then pass on to the next bird, that gives it enough time to dry. So I'm keeping the birds slightly lighter at the top, adding a deeper color towards the bottom, and I'm doing that in layers and letting them dry in between. You can see now that I'm using my regular watercolor brush to do that finished label or finish painting, the finishing touch. So laying down the color, I don't paint directly usually with my zigs. I pretty much always lay down the color in my little dish. I don't dilute the watercolor colors in the dish, I just pick it up with a damp brush, but I just find it easier to work this way. And I don't tend to waste any of the paint this way, I think, too, the colors. And this, I'm using a Tim Holtz Distress Dried Marigold ink that I've laid down for the throat pouch on the pelican and for the beak on the other bird as well. I noticed I added more color to the top. I noticed in pictures I looked at of the pelicans, the pouches vary in color. But usually the bottom part is lighter. I don't have the dies for these. I don't believe there are dies for these stamps, actually. So I fussy cut everything out once I was done the coloring. Now I'm just adding white gel pen to the base of the birds, changing how the design looks on each one of them. One is just like lines all together, and the other one is little flicks of like a feather. And then I added some Wink of Stello to the left side of the birds, each of the birds' wing. And I colored the branch once I was done with the birds in green, using the green obviously. And I also added, once I put it on the card, I added some Wink of Stella to it as well. There you can see I'm adding the Wink of Stella. Now I'm going to put it all together. I've glued the vellum down to line up with where the frame will be so you won't see the glue. And on the frame I've used foam dots and gone around the frame with all the dots. That is an Impression Obsession die called Frames. So I center it to where I want it to be, covering the ink below. And then I go ahead and I have the mouse pads in my MISTI, but my old pads that came out of the MISTI I use for styling now. So I style my birds. Nothing goes to waste. I style my birds and I attach them also using the foam dots. I actually ended up using 2 layers of foam dots for the birds, so it didn't look like their legs were bending back in. And here's where I add in the pelican. I gotta say that's gotta be one of my favorite ones. But I also love the flamingo, which you'll see in a minute. So there they are, and I glue in the branch and then add the Wink of Stella to it. And then, of course, I love sequins on my cards. I just think it adds a little bit of elegance. So I add some sequins at the end. I use glossy accents to glue down the branch and as well as the vellum. My cardstock is Nina Solar Crest, Classic Crest I should say, Solar White cardstock, and 110 pound. The frame is cut with the same cardstock. And then here I'm just securing everything because I'm going to add in the sentiment stamps of Chirp Tweet, and I'm using the Paradise Teal for this as well. And I left that to the end because I didn't know where my birds would be, so that's what the Misty is so handy for. You can just put things back in it. Mind you, I work in my Misty, so I'm a little bit different, but if you don't work in your Misty, you can put the card right back in and attach sequins or stamp and a sentiment. It works wonderfully for that. So have a look at Ink Blot shop. I have links on my blog, and see all her fun stamps. They're really marvelous and so nice to work with. I think you'll enjoy it. And if you don't have a Misty, visit My Sweet Petunia. I started out with the mini and I use it a lot, I must say. But I also use the original quite often. And this is my second card that I did. I didn't do a video of it, but I will in a few days, I think. I used the flamingo stamp, and I added some inking to it. So those are my cards for today. Thank you for joining me, and I'll see you next time.